But I just kind of wonder, how do you move from just like singing it so nicely, how great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his sovereignty is from generation to generation. I mean, how do we turn that around from just being a nice song and a lovely scripture to actually being something that is captured in the song we've just sung, Amazing Grace? Did you notice in that second verse where it talks about how he goes through trials and tribulations, and in other words, like he's not going to get there just by knowing it off by heart. It's actually going to be an exceedingly painful progress. As we've kind of noticed with going through Daniel thus far, the thing that's different about our passage this time is that he starts not with a drama this time in his life as he tells this story, but he starts with a statement. This is my statement about what I say God is. I want to tell you about a great and awesome God who has done wonders and signs for me. Imagine having that kind of a testimony. I have signs and wonders that I want to tell you about. So, in summary, how would you condense? What is it that he has actually learnt to turn around and say that? What was the one lesson, the two words that were said in this passage that God wants him to learn? Any ideas? God rules. God rules. That's the lesson that Nebuchadnezzar is finally learning. In chapter 1, we had a look at how these young fellas go into Babylon to be in service of the king. Now the king, it says in chapter 4, I was in my home palace, contented and prosperous. I had a dream that made me afraid. I was lying on my bed, and the images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. Now, imagine who this guy is. This is Nebuchadnezzar. He's the most powerful king. He's that head of gold. He can do whatever he wants. And one of the things that kings do is that they make sure that they're safe and secure, that nothing rattles them. So I produce a massive army, I equip them well, and now I'm safe from any physical army coming against me. One of the Proverbs talks about how wonderful and strong a king and confident a king can feel when he has a big army around him. And I have a big army, he says. It's a huge army, and I'm excited. And then we notice in our passage that this king also has a heap of administrators. When he calls people to worship his image of gold that he sets up, he names off all these people. Who are they? Last week, he names them off over and over again. You rattled them off as though you knew. Oh, I want to make sure I don't lose anything. So I'm going to appoint all kinds of people to all kinds of different roles to make sure you collect taxes, you're the intelligence part and, for information, ASIO, and then you guys are going to do this and you guys are going to administer justice. I'm going to make sure that this place runs like clockwork. It's going to be the McDonald's of McDonald's, right? That's it. Yeah, I was talking to one of the assistant managers at McDonald's and he gets in there and he has a list of procedures that he does so that nothing is missed. This is Nebuchadnezzar. Nothing is going to go out of place in my kingdom because I have appointed everybody a task for a reason. And then he has, just to make sure everything else is right, I've got all these spiritual advisors so that nothing will undo me. But what's been happening in our stories? Each one of these stories, there's an unraveling of this guy's so secure life. For starters, he thinks that he's got a hold on knowledge and wisdom. But when he has this dream to kind of almost prove that I've got everything under control, I'm going to let everybody know, look, I had a dream, but you've got to tell me what it is. And they're going, well, we can't. What do you mean you can't? You guys are here to do that kind of work for me. I've got armies to do fighting. I've got things to do this, people to do that. Now you guys need to tell me this. What did I dream so that it can get right? In other words, I have control on knowledge. And over again in chapter 2, he lets us know that Daniel says to him, I want you to know that there's a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. There's stuff that you don't know about, and I don't care how many advisors you get, how many spiritual people you get, you will not know it because stuff comes from God. And then in chapter 3, what's the lesson that he's learning there? That his part of his world's going to get unraveled. Did you realize that blast furnaces were only, the English discovered blast furnaces so that they could make their cannons and cannonballs faster and better and more accurate than anybody, army, navy in the world. And it's what set England apart and their navy apart, is that they could fire cannonballs specifically to hit a target, whereas the other guys were handmade cannonballs. Like I made a handmade bow and arrow as a kid, and I could fire it a long way. Accuracy was not our greatest feature. Not when you're firing it in a city. Well, I think about it now, and I'm terrified what I used to do. I used to fire these arrows right over 2 blocks in Canberra. A pussycat willow. Parents, don't grow a pussycat willow in your yard because they make excellent bows and terrible arrows. And so they discovered things. But I find that Nebuchadnezzar's got a blast furnace. And he's saying, I am powerful. And he can heat it 7 times hotter. And what's the lesson he's learning? Is that when these guys stand up and say, no, we are not going to worship your God Nebuchadnezzar and not your images, is there is a God who is able to save us from your hand. What? From my hand? Never. I am the most powerful. So, we get to chapter 4. He starts with this wonderful thing. What a wonderful testimony. I had a dream that made me afraid. I got something. God was able to get through all my defenses and got to me and made me afraid and terrified because I have a dream. And he's scared. So what does he do? I command all my wise men of Babylon to be brought to me to interpret the dream for me. I shouldn't be afraid. One of the things I kind of notice is that there are things that play around in our mind. And when we start playing around with things in our mind, we get afraid. Or we get bold. Or we get all kinds of things in our heads. We talk to ourselves. We have ideas in our heads and then we play with them. I know a guy who has an MRI on his, going to have it on his brain because he's having constant headaches and they're afraid that there's something wrong. And as I was sitting and talking with him in Canberra, that he's going through all these scenarios in his head as to what's going to go wrong. Nothing's gone wrong, but you play in your mind these things that go through your mind. And without even knowing any facts, just because he's gone in and called up an advisor, a doctor, and he says, I want to send you for a test. These things start going through your mind and you start getting terrified. What if I've got a tumour? Or you know that there's trouble in the workplace and you've got to confront somebody. And you start playing out stories in your mind as to how that's going to be. And it will produce in you a fear. Or you might go through in your mind and a great offer comes to you. You know, if you could do, there's an opportunity open for you. And you start going, oh, I could do this and I could do this. And then all of a sudden you're going, yes, I've got a lot of motivation. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. We play in our mind, and it's like a battle goes on in your mind. What if it was worse? You have an argument with your wife, or she becomes stubborn and obnoxious or uncaring. And then all of a sudden you see a movie, and you see how this guy works out this problem, and you get this idea in your head, I might be better off without her. There'll be a better woman out there for me. See? There are things that either it's going to be from God, or it's going to be from Satan, or it's going to be from your own pride. Will plant things in your head and it will send it into overdrive unless you pull it into line. Doctors can do it, movies can do it, books can do it. And so you need to be careful. And he does. He says, well, I shouldn't be afraid. I'll call in my advisors. What advisors will you draw on to sort out the troubles in your mind? Where will you go? I commanded the wise men to come before me to interpret the dream for me. Then the magicians, the chanterers, the diviners came. I told them the dream, but they could not interpret it. And finally Daniel came into my presence and I told him the dream. Do you realize the first message in this series on Daniel, where these guys are being called into the king's service? And I was challenging you to desire after spiritual gifts. That's what Daniel and his three friends did. They desired spiritual gifts so that as they entered the king's service, they would be of use to him. And one of the things that the Apostle Paul made mention to us was desiring prophecy. What does that mean? I will put it in a nutshell. Over and over again in this chapter, it is you're able to interpret what God is saying to the world. That's what it means. That's why Paul wants you to be able and desire spiritual gift of prophesying, taking what God says and applying it to people. I had that privilege this week where I had a guy and he'd been causing some trouble over in Canberra. So I was over there to firstly correct him. I went with the intention of sacking him. He had done something illegal. And one of the problems is that when you have people working for you, they're an extension of you. For Nebuchadnezzar as well, as he has all these astrologers and diviners and enchanters and that sort of thing, and his army and his advisors, they are an extension of him, a reflection of him. So when he stands on the roof of his house and he says, is this not my great Babylon that I have built for the majesty of my glory? All these people in here are for the extension of my glory. I run that the way my business is too. the guys who work for me are to extend what I am. I want them to reflect my character. I want them to be honest. I want them to have integrity. I want them to be kind and concerned and considerate and doing the best for people. That's what I want them to do. So when this guy turns around, and I caught him on video, I was suspicious of what he had put out, of putting preservative in mints, which is illegal and has been for 30 years in ACT, 50 years in New South Wales. And he does that. And I'm angry with him. I'm disappointed with him. That is not reflecting me. Not only is it illegal, and he knows that, but he was told when we employed him, do not put preservative in mints. And he's gone ahead and done it. I caught him on the camera just to make sure that I was not barking up the wrong tree. And as I did, he walked past. And I asked him, I said, did you put preservative in the mints? And he said, yes, I did. I did it for you. I said, for me? How can you? I said, we told you not to. And he came up with all kinds of excuses. I thought about it over the weekend. I went back on Monday, and I had a letter written out for his resignation because I thought of these things. You're not exposing who I am. You're actually putting in jeopardy every single person who works in this company. So I went through. He didn't get the text message. I wanted to give him time to think about what I was putting to him, that, why should I continue to employ you? And he lost his phone. So I rocked up there, getting all nervous, playing through those scenarios in my mind. And when I got there, I said to him that I wanted to have a word with him, and then went over. I said, mate, it's obvious you have no respect for the law and little regard for me, because you've gone ahead and you've done this. He said, he came up with all kinds of excuses, that people, they're right. They've been eating preservative all their life, they'll be right. He came up with all kinds. And then I said, why should I keep you? And he started to plead for his job. And I'm determined, I want to get, no, that's it. And I thought, no, I've given girls who are as slow as a wet week, they were polite and nice, and I'm trying to get them to work faster and be a reflection of me. That's naughty, and that, to try and make people, I want you to work as fast as I do. Please, come on, Millie. Put running shoes on. Have you got running shoes on? What do you mean, Gary? Oh, good grief. She doesn't even get my analogy. So, and I thought, I'd give her a chance. He's pleading for his job. I said, all right. He said, give me 2 weeks to prove to you. I said, I'll give you 1 week. I said, by the way, I said, there's more than that. I said, the way in which you speak to my staff, the other girls, I said, it's terrible. I said, you must do it with gentleness and respect. Stop bullying them and stop shouting at them and swearing at them. I don't swear at them. I said, well, what do you call swearing? I said, mate, the other day, one of the guys came in. They asked you, how do you cook a pickled ox tongue? And he said, oh, no, he didn't. I said, yeah. I said, you stood there and you go, what do I look like? I won't use all the words he said, okay? A flaming cook or a butcher? And the guy just stood there, stunned as a mullet. And I go, I'll help you, follow me. And I went out and told him, and I repeated that to him. And he said, oh, I didn't do it in front of customers. I said, no, but you did it loud enough for them all to hear. And he goes, oh, I didn't. I said, gentleness and respect. He said, how do I know how to cook a pickled ox tongue? Who knows how to cook pickle? No. See? So he's in good company if he was here. And I said, that's all you need to say. Do it gently and with respect. That's what the Bible says. Now, this guy has gone to a Catholic school. He talks about God quite often, etc. And I said, if you want to know whether or not God is real, I said, try praying that you might do things gently and with respect. And I said, because God answers those kind of prayers. Do you know what he went on about? He said, I can't believe that you would sack me because of such a thing when you eat meat on Good Friday. And I'm going, what? How do you cross putting preservative in mince with eating meat on Good Friday? Anyway, he said, well, look, Jesus, he ate fish on Good Friday. I said, mate, he's hanging on a cross. There wasn't a menu. He didn't say, I'll have grilled fish today. And he goes, oh, okay. Anyway, I tried to alleviate. And so he's going off in order. So the next day, I said, so do that. I'll give you 1 week to prove that you can speak to these the girls. The next day, I go. And he comes to me and he said, I want to have a word to you. He said, I want a pay rise. And not only do I want a pay rise, he said, I don't believe that I speak disrespectfully to the girls. And at that point I knew I was wasting my time. So I went home to my mum's place and she said, son, you got no choice. He is not willing to change. So I went back and I went in and I thought I'll do it first thing in the morning. So as soon as he arrived, I told him, I said, I kept it really short and simple. I said, look, mate, don't worry about putting your kid on. You're finishing up now because of serious misconduct, preservative in mince, not happening. I now understood what Steve was trying to tell us about last week when the countenance of Nebuchadnezzar changed when Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego says, we are not going to bow down to your God. I want to let you know that that is just not going to happen. And Nebuchadnezzar's countenance changed, and this guy's countenance changed like that. He went from being a happy bloke to his blood vessels in his arm popping out, his eyes as big as anything, and just going red like Marianne's jumper there. He was furious. And then straight in my face and just poured out heaps of profanities and those sort of things. And I thought I was going to get knocked into next week. And I said to him, I said, if you like, you can go and hit me. And I did that tactically. But one of the things I was hanging on to the whole time is that proverb, a gentle word turns away wrath. And then a confusing word also, if you like, you can hit me. And he goes, I don't want to hit you! And then he grabs his shirt and he rips it off, busts all the buttons. Sorry, dolls. You got work ahead of you. And then goes to my cool room to get his kit, and it's a sliding door, and he lifts it up. It's a massive door, and throws it to the side and goes in the cool room. I thought, I'll leave him in there. Might cool him down. Finds his kit, comes out and gives us a fair bit more of a serve, and then leaves. And well, he refuses to leave until he gets his money and all of those sort of things. But he goes. The fruit and veggie guys are just across the hall, and while he's shouting out all this stuff, and normally those guys have got the deepest, most meaningful conversation as they're putting out collies and broccolis, and and I'm thinking they are the quietest blokes in the world this morning. Like normally they're shouting it out across the thing. Goes, oh, I got drunk on the weekend. Anyway, they're dead still. And he left. And I could imagine what it was like for those three fellas when Nebuchadnezzar changed. Getting back to our passage, though, where will you go when you have the wrong thoughts in your head? What will you now do? So he asks him, please interpret the dream. The privilege that we have is that we have the Spirit of the Holy God in us. that we're able to interpret what God is saying to the world and to one another. And if we've got one thing that this kingdom needs, is an interpretation for the world. I'm so pleased with Mary Ann's testimony at the Dying with Dignity thing when she asked, where does God fit into the picture? All of a sudden there's an opportunity for people to consider how God fits into the picture. And so he goes through, and even though he is being asked to interpret the dream, I know the Spirit of the Holy Gods is in you. Interpret the dream. It's not too hard. It is hard for him to explain the dream. I want to tell you, it was not easy standing there telling him over and over again, the most precious and important thing in his life is not good enough. You see, the one thing he kept on saying, and the reason why he got so angry, is that I am the best butcher. Every single day, it's a joke in the shop. They all turn around and say, ask Dave, he's the best butcher. Ask Dave, he knows the best. So much so that on the Saturday before, we're short a butcher. We've only got one butcher. It's the busiest day, and he's getting really cranky and frustrated and throwing the bits and pieces around. My manager comes out to him and says, what's the matter? No, well, I'm the only one here, and Gary hasn't printed another butcher, and thinking, look, the guy's sick. He can't come in, etc. But Dave, you're the best. And he stood there and he goes, you're right, I am. And he changed, and he's ripping into it, and he's making mince, and he's doing stuff. And I did the day with one butcher. Yes, that's really good. He believes that he's the best. And when he's telling me and pleading for his job, and he says, last Saturday, Gary, I was the best. You know what you're looking at, Gary? He said, not one butcher, two in me. That's why I want a pay rise, mate. You promised me. No, I didn't, actually. And so it's fearful. You're going to tread on this guy's ground and what's most precious to him by saying, no. You have a wrong worldview. You have a wrong opinion about yourself. You are not the greatest. It takes more than slicing meat to make a great butcher. To be a great king, you need to get your vision right. So Daniel's afraid before he speaks to the king and gives him an interpretation. You should be scared, is justifiably scared and terrified to talk to a king. Little kings, but they're big in their own eyes, and tell them where they really are and how they stand before God. Well, the way you speak, Dave, is wrong. And he said to me, nobody has ever told me that. So he tells him the dream, and he gets to that point. Heaven rules. Are you able to align your thoughts with heaven rules? God rules over all. At the end of my time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes towards heaven, and my sanity was restored. The advice that Daniel gives him heads him towards that place. Therefore, your majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sin by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind. In other words, what's going to help you avoid pride and this downfall that God has shown you is going to take place is by doing what is right and by being kind. Right is a choice, and kindness is like a disposition, like a character, like an attitude to people. Like, I want to be kind. It's why I don't sack some of my guys at work, because I want to be kind to them. And I can see that I got an Aboriginal guy who started, he's 20 years old. He has never worked in his life. He doesn't have a tax file number, at 20. And I've given him an opportunity to start, and my manager says to me, I'm so frustrated with him. He just doesn't stop talking because he's never worked. He's never worked. Being kind. And I will teach him, and I'll keep on trying to teach him. But doing what is right. One of the things I thought of doing is I forgot to send some meat over. So Nathan was coming over, and I was going to get him to throw some T-bones in there in the car and bring them over. And I rang him up beforehand, and I thought, that's not right. I'm asking Dave not to put preservative mince, and now, if it's convenient for me, I'm going to do something that's wrong. So I rang Nathan and I said, do you mind not bringing it? I will spend more money from getting it from one of the local suppliers who will rip me off, I know that, but I'll have the right thing. Because it's what, Nebuchadnezzar, you will get your vision right if you do what is right. And if you have a right disposition towards people, being merciful to them, being kind to them, and then you will stop this downfall. What does he do? He starts looking at his kingdom, and that's where he starts getting himself wrong. I have built this kingdom. It is for my glory. God gave it to you. You're a steward. You are to look after it for him. And his sanity is restored when his eyes turn towards heaven. What a wonderful story we have. We're going to sing a song now, The Love of the Father.